I originally played this match in the legendary tier American Cruiser USS Worcester with the aim of testing out equilibrium of power on the build. And I'll show you the build here. It's a conventional Norm Scott build with the equilibrium of power skill selected in the legendary row. We've also got Mimbelli and Mikawa as the inspirations. Mikawa for better concealment, Mimbelli for better main battery reload time. And there is, I suppose, a downside to taking equilibrium of power on the Worcester, but there's plenty of upsides too. However, with the way this battle shakes out, I think it's more important to talk about, I suppose, a tactical subject instead of a build subject, and that is playing the flank on which you spawn. Now, sometimes in certain cases, there are going to be legitimate reasons for you to leave a flank, but most of the time, wherever you spawn, that's where you should play. And naturally, on this Grease map, at least I think that's what the name of this thing is, we spawn near the alpha flank, so we are going to move toward it in order to play it. And as we're doing so, the USS Indiana is pushing in, but take a look at the minimap. The cruiser that spawned next to us, the Santander, is pushing for the center. So is the friendly battleship, although he might be reversing on his way to the center, I can't tell. Either way, we're not going to have any teammates push out onto this flank with us. They're going to go into the center, and even worse, the blue battleships are all going to cluster up together, which I consider criminal misplay of the battleship as a class. The main value of the battleship is its ability to deal devastating damage to broadsides. So if you have multiple battleships on a team, you want them in different places on the map. That way the enemy doesn't only need to angle in one direction to protect their citadels from the large guns of that class. If you put all your battleships together, you are making an attempt to guarantee that the enemy never has to worry about crossfires and that obtaining any kind of map control is going to be left entirely to your cruisers and destroyers, and they're not going to have the benefit of your large guns backing them up. But abandoning the flank on which you spawn, that is the worst thing here, because as you can see, this flank is full of ships. We saw the USS Indiana. He's tucked behind an island. We've been intermittently spotted on our way pushing toward the Alpha Cap. And if you looked at the team lineup at the start of the match, there is a division with a Smolensk and a destroyer, I believe the Burrows. And obviously there's an angry smoke screen not too far from us with a lot of shells emerging from it. That'll be the Smolensk. And there's almost a guarantee that his division mate, the destroyer, is also on this flank, which is probably the reason that we were getting spotted every so often. Anyway, Indiana decides to come out from behind the island. We're the only ones around here to spot him, so we're briefly going to lose vision. Still remain spotted ourselves, which makes me think the Burrows is probably somewhere directly in front of us. Smolensk trying to farm us outside of the smokescreen, but we go dark, get spotted again. That's definitely got to be the Burrows, somewhere around this island chain. He might actually be off toward the right-hand side of the screen, because this particular island has like this teeth thing going on in the center, and you can sometimes spot people through the teeth. Suppose I could have used radar there, but it wasn't a guarantee that we'd catch Burrows. There's Smolensk. Keep that in mind, but Indiana, that's who we want to finish off first, because effectively we're alone on this flank, and if we are going to try to push in to make use of our radar against the probable Burrows and the Smolensk, we can't have these gigantic battleship guns standing in our way. Now, Indiana, he's been hurt a lot by this EOP build. One of the main benefits is he's coated in 38 millimeters of armor everywhere. Worcester gets the special pen calculation on its HE to do 30 millimeters base, but with EOP, it pens 39. So it pens the Indiana and all American battleships pretty much everywhere, except for their Citadel belt armor and their turrets. And, well, we get the Arsonist medal on Indiana, which means we did a lot of damage with that fire. Very useful, ironically, against American battleships, although the downside is limited charges of the consumables. If you're going to take not fully packed, but EOP, well, then you're not going to have 3 charges of each consumable. So we've only got 2 heals and 2 radars, the first of which we decide to use now in order to spot the Smolensk in that smoke, which may not even be his smoke any longer. I suspect it's the Burrows. Anyway, he's a little too angled, so we've got to switch to the HE, which of course can really hurt him. But we're going to switch our fire to his division mate, the Burrows, since he's right in front of us. Another downside, though, to EOP, if you are going to take it, is that it does nerf the HE shell damage. At base, the Worcester has excellent HE shell damage at 2200. That's pretty high for these 12 152mm guns, and it would absolutely demolish destroyers. However, with the damage nerf courtesy of EOP, we're at 1760, and that may come back to bite us. Now, for the blue team's part, it's not done that bad of a job. The enemy battleships apparently have pushed in on the Charlie flank, except for that Indiana. They've been taken out. And we're almost, well, we're ahead on kills. We've got 4 of the red team sunk. They've only got 3 of us. Here, though, we make a terrible error. Always shoot at the destroyers. That Burrows has like 1 little HP sliver left, and I think if we landed maybe another shell or 2 on him, he'd be going back to port. But he goes dark. We've got this Smolensk in front of us, and one thing about Smolensk, even though I think it is pretty cracked, is it's not very good in 1v1 fights against any other cruiser. We do a number to him with the HE, more damage than he does to us, and then he turns broadside to get all his guns or torpedoes on target. And, well, American AP from a light cruiser, not ideal. We're able to get the Citadel, and Smolensk goes down. So the Burrows is suddenly without his division mate. But there's the torpedoes from Smolensk. And of course, one does make contact. It's not lethal, but it's not helpful either, considering we've lost most of our HP. Another, perhaps, example of the downside of running EOP on Worcester. There's Burrows again, dodging the incoming fire from the Santander. We hit him once. It's a full pen. But maybe, had we not been running EOP and had the full damage from our HE shells, maybe that one shell would have sent that guy back to port. As it stands, he's still got just the tiniest little sliver of health left, and he remains to fight on for another moment. He's spotting us, though, permanently. And of course, this ship is balanced, at least in the sense that its radar consumable isn't stealth. We have a 10.4 kilometer detect by sea. The range of our radar is only, and I say that in scare quotes, only 9 kilometers. So even though we're spotted by Burrows, he's probably not within our radar range. The biggest problem is that FDG can continue to shoot at us, and there is one other cruiser that was lurking around. We're able to throw off the FDG shots by playing with the rudder and the throttle, and I suppose purposely hitting the island, assuming that the shells would go past us, and they do. We get stuck here for a brief, terrifying moment, but we're able to extricate ourselves. We did use the radar, perhaps a bit too quick on the uptake. No value in it. We didn't catch the Burrows. But we do manage to get away from the FDG relatively unscathed, as his one shell hits the rather dumb 32mm plate on the Worcester's rear end and bounces. That doesn't always happen. That rear end of the ship is flat, and sometimes those shells do pen, even if they, don't overmatch 32mm of armor. If they hit a flat surface, they're still going to pen it. Anyway, we're still spotted, no radar left, don't quite know where Burrows is, probably somewhere to the left-hand side of this island chain. So we're going to continue increasing the distance, and maybe turn around if we go dark to get closer to the Alpha Cap. We don't necessarily need to take it, though. The blue team has at least done the job of securing Bravo and Charlie. So it's not like they haven't done work in this game, and I don't want to disparage the team as a whole too much just because everybody abandoned this flank except me. But I want you to consider for a moment what might have happened had I joined my team by sailing toward the center or toward the Charlie Cap and not remaining available on this flank. Well, we know that the Smolensk, the Burrows, and the Indiana all came over here. And if I weren't here, they may very well have pushed straight through this flank, gotten into our spawn area, and if that occurred, we could have seen a more aggressive push from the Bravo Charlie side, and our team could have been in a crossfire. Even if you are the only ship that decides to play your flank, it's probably better to do that than to totally abandon it and give up all map control to the enemy. And even though we've had a bit of a tough time up until now, I think we are going to be rewarded for it by the time this battle is over. Anyway, we finally cut off line of sight for the Burrows. He, I suppose, wouldn't know that we no longer have radar, so hopefully he is being cautious. And we're just going to try to peek out here to see what happens. Burrows is definitely over somewhere to the left-hand side of the screen, judging by those torps. But the enemy cruiser is directly in front of us, and I don't know if we were being radared by him or the Burrows, but it is a Des Moines. And of course, he is pretty dangerous to us, especially if he wants to shoot AP. Although he is shooting HE, and as we go behind the island here, we're able to block line of sight once again and go dark. We need to spot the Des Moines, though. We do have one battleship pushing in, perhaps the most ill-suited battleship to this task at the legendary tier. It's USS Vermont. Not exactly a ship you would accuse of being quick in any way. And it's a ship that I think could be a terrible target for the Des Moines HE spam. I don't know if Des Moines is running EOP, but if he is, he's going to pen the Vermont hull everywhere. Even if he's not, he's going to pen the superstructure, and it's gigantic. And then he's got that FDG and still that Burrows to help him out. We're going to try as hard as we can to get some meaningful damage on the Des Moines, but also not sink in the process. This is a little bit risky here, but with Vermont where he is, we know that we can afford to be at least a little bit aggressive. Although the 10,000 HP we have left is all the HP we're ever going to have for this match. And again, I stress that if you take EOP and buff the damage output and the fire chance, well, buff the damage output by buffing the fire chance, it nerfs the maximum damage. Well, then, yeah, you have to deal with that. By the way, always sink the enemy DD when the chance is there for you. We get taken out by torpedoes that Burrows probably forgot he even launched at us. And, well, they're such stealthy torpedoes that by the time we see them, we're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and we end up going down. However, I think we've done enough work to help our teammates win this battle. The Burrows has no HP. That does at least limit the amount of plays he can make. He can't be as reckless as he might otherwise be if he were full HP, and our radar at least helped reduce him to this state. So he's kind of in trouble. He's inside of that smoke screen, not torpedoing the Vermont, who knows to use the rudder and avoid obvious torpedoes. That's good for him. He does continually ping the Santander for support, but I don't think the Santander, or for that matter, the other battleship in the Bravo Cap are doing anything wrong here. I also wouldn't say the Vermont, for his part, is doing anything wrong particularly either. We don't need to push in. We have 2 out of 3 of the caps and a commanding points lead. Pushing in is only going to play into the enemy's strengths, because if we push into them, they're going to have the advantage and more easily be able to sink us, particularly since they've still got this destroyer left, and at least that battleship over there, 14 kilometers to the right-hand side of the screen, is pretty healthy. Anyway, another survey of the team here in the final minute of this match. Indiana is tucked behind this island, hiding, I suppose, where he can't really be seen or hit by these 2 battleships. But it's understandable. He doesn't have a lot of HP, and if he just presents himself and sinks, it's not like that's helpful to the team. And then for his part, the cruiser that spawned with us and abandoned the flank, he's also hiding behind a rock. Again, not a bad move for him. If he sinks, no value to the team whatsoever. Vermont, well, I don't think he needed to make this push, but I'm not going to say it was useless to the blue team. It has, I think, at least provided a distraction for these 2 battleships who otherwise might have made a beeline for the Bravo Cap and found our other 2 teammates and sunk them. Burrows, he's reduced to just being able to use torpedoes until this final moment. I think he does take a shot. And he does get the Vermont with the torpedoes, but it's too little too late. There's only 2 seconds left in the battle, and our two hiding teammates in the center manage to stay alive, and we win. But this ended up being, I think, an unnecessarily sweaty match because of the decisions of our teammates abandoning the flank. I don't know if the results of this battle would have played out exactly the same had we not chosen to play the flank on which we spawned, but there's a good chance that if we hadn't played that flank, we could have easily lost this battle, and things might have gone very differently for the blue team. You can see we were rewarded with top place on the leaderboard. So if you take anything away from this video, don't abandon your flank for no reason at the start of the battle. At least try to play it, even if you're the only ship doing so. It might be the difference in turning the tide. Hope you enjoyed this video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.